The word misophonia, the condition, is not something that I knew about until 8 years into the relationship. I didn't know why it bothered me so much. And then luckily someone told me about misophonia. And that was very helpful to understand that I wasn't just crazy.
I've known my fiance for 10 years, and I've known her longer than I've known I've had misophonia. I didn't tell her, I more found it out and kept her informed. I would send her links like, hey babe, look at this, sound sensitivity syndrome. And she would say, oh, this sounds like you. We were on this journey for self-diagnosis together.
Probably came early into the relationship, you know, because a lot of people sort of around me will make a joke like, oh, don't make that noise around her, you know, if you crunch, she'll lose her mind, you know, kind of jokingly. But as we've been together 20 years, and it just sort of gradually would start to come out.
When we first started dating, and like the first time I stayed the night at his house, I was like, do you snore? Do you breathe heavy? And he's like, I don't know why. I'm like, because I can't stand it. Like I will leave if that happens. When I figured out and was told about misophonia, I was like, wow, like this sounds like what I've been going through my entire life. Sometimes I feel like maybe he doesn't completely understand, and he thinks that it's just me being annoyed with things rather than like, I really cannot stand it.
As I've been getting older, I feel like it's been getting worse. More of the rage has increased with time too. I mean, I'm lucky that he is pretty understanding and pretty patient. I think it's hard for those that don't have it to really understand, like, it's more than just being annoyed or like a nail on chalkboard. You just feel so much rage.
In 2008, I actually went to an ear doctor because I really thought I was going crazy and really wanted some diagnosis, and then things in our life kind of went crazy and we never got an official diagnosis.
I first started explaining my misophonia around 2 months before we started dating. I didn't really like to tell a lot of people about misophonia because it's really hard to understand. I had no idea they had it prior to going into this, so I felt really vulnerable just because you don't always know how someone is gonna respond to your needs.
You learn about the issues together and you talk about how you can mitigate with each other. Otherwise, there's this resentment of, I can't be who I am. And after a while, that takes its toll.
I often get asked during my evaluations with patients, when should I tell someone if I'm dating about misophonia? Many people who have misophonia never tell anyone, or very few people. There's a great element of shame in people who have misophonia that needs exploration and study, because after all, it's a biochemical physiologic change that you didn't make happen. You're not responsible for it, but you feel like it's some shameful secret. When do I tell my date about my skeletons in my closet? Well, this is very individual. Some people make it very clear and right from the beginning, and many people, though, I think the most common thing is they have a few dates with somebody and they watch their behavior. And I've had many patients tell me, well, I really liked him or her. We went out for a date, but I really couldn't tolerate his eating style. And I was embarrassed to tell him why, so I just said I wasn't interested. And that's a common situation. And I would like to encourage people with misophonia to see it and start thinking about it like a diabetes, where you say, I have been diagnosed with misophonia at a young age, and it affects how I can tolerate certain sounds. And so I want you to know this about me, because I might stand up and walk away. I'm not really mad at you. I'm only mad at this moment and those sounds you're making. And it's okay to have those honest discussions.
I would say that the thing that is hardest for me in dealing with misophonia and being in a relationship is that sometimes my partner will start to make noises or move in certain ways that just really irks me, and he doesn't recognize it, and it's like I get angry at him, and he doesn't understand why I'm feeling so angry. And so then in turn, he gets annoyed, and sometimes it can turn into like some sort of argument or where we just need to kind of be apart, and it makes things more difficult. So it kind of feels like sometimes it's a hindrance on our relationship for sure.
First, it's like, how do I explain this to somebody, and are they going to believe me, or, you know, believe that it's a real thing? So it's only been in the last few years that, you know, there's been like misophonia named. There's a little more validation about it. I think that's helped my husband understand it more. It definitely has taken him a while to truly get it and not take it personally when I can't like be in the same room with him while we're eating. It's, you know, it affects our whole family for sure.
Living with my fiance has exacerbated some of the sounds that used to not be a problem. This has also kind of put a little bit of strain on our relationship. She knows it's not her fault that I get upset, but it's still hard when I have to leave the room or when I have to tell her to leave or when I have to put in earplugs. She takes it personally, even though she knows she shouldn't. And we have a really great relationship, but no relationship is perfectly immune to the trials and tribulations of misophonia, unfortunately.
When I first told this person that I had misophonia, they said, I have this too. I never heard of this before, but I have it too. That was before we had even started dating. To have someone there that shared something as deep as that was really interesting. It can become really easy to have their own triggers morph into your own, and you take those on. So that was really dangerous for me, but it was also amazing to have someone who just accepted who I was and just understood me no matter what.
One of our most basic human instincts as infants is to be close to and relate to other humans. One of the hallmarks of misophonia is how it abruptly changes relationships with other human beings. This is very disturbing for those who have misophonia. Oftentimes in my clinical practice now of over 23 years, working with people that have misophonia, these relationships are fractured or fragmented or disrupted or broken, and all of these relationships change significantly.
It was not a lot of effort put forth to learn about it. My significant other is kind of the complete opposite of me, where he makes noise all the time. And so it was very difficult for him to understand and modify his behavior.
I personally haven't been in a relationship, but if I were to be in a relationship, it sounds kind of stupid, but I would need the boy to chew with his mouth closed. I physically cannot date anyone that chews their mouth open. The sole thing that I'd be focusing on is their mouth, like opening and closing and the food falling out, this and that. I sound crazy saying that, but I physically cannot focus on that. So if I were to date you, you need to chew your mouth closed.
It's been well recognized that misophonia has a tremendous negative impact on relationships with your parents, your siblings, your significant others, your spouses, your work companions, your friends, strangers. This kind of a condition affects almost every form of human relationship, some to greater degrees than others, and it is very difficult for people to figure out how to deal with it.
Looking out at a view or taking a walk, it's so easy for a special romantic moment to be cut short by like someone chewing gum on the pier or someone coughing as they walk past you in the moonlight. And it's so hard to stay focused on the romance when you're always afraid that one of your triggers is going to go off.
It was really hard to have something where everything was perfect. It was never really a normal kind of relationship where you could just go on dates anywhere, like to the movies or...
If we love to go out to eat, but I will get triggered really easily if I can hear him slurping or crunching or things like that.
You want to just sit and enjoy a lazy morning with your husband drinking coffee and not be bothered by it, but then it's so consuming that you can't do that.
And I think maybe it's impacted our alone time together, that it's completely separate.
I think my socializing spoons run a little low after a while because of all of the noise that we're bombarded with in like a party or a club setting, which is a shame because I love parties.
We're in the movie theater and I can hear people chewing their popcorn. I will just walk out and I can't stand it.
I have to have my medication and I have to have my earplugs, and it's less of a social setting and more of a survival setting when you're seeing a movie.
And I think that may kind of put a hindrance on our relationship as well.
We've adapted and we have a really, really good relationship, but it makes things a little more complicated.
So I've spent a lot of time in 23 years thinking of things people with misophonia can do. And I often encourage couples to do their homework. What can they do together where they're not talking, where they're not getting triggered, they're not eating? What kinds of activities can they schedule so they feel like they're doing stuff? One of those is recreational dancing. Line dancing, a Zumba classes. You can go and take a dancing class and have a great time without conversation. Another good activity that I found is bowling. Bowling alleys are incredibly loud. You're busy moving, and that's a really fun thing to do. Another thing is kayaking, getting a boat in the water and paddling around. Anything where you're very active, physically going to sporting events, going to concerts. Just even if you take a walk to somewhere where there's a lot of noise, and that's an ideal situation for an activity where you're spending time together, but you're not just in a quiet room talking.
It's hard to think of a perfect date without dreaming that I didn't have misophonia. But if money were no object, I think my perfect date with my fiance would be our favorite restaurant in Brooklyn by the Hudson River. It's a really quiet restaurant and the food is phenomenal. We'd have a lovely dinner and we'd walk along the pier in the moonlight.
If money was not in the question, I'd really like to go see the Lakers play in Los Angeles. Arenas are always so loud, no matter what you do, that the noise just like drowns out everything.
Like if we could just go to Nashville for the weekend and we were there last summer and listened to great music. I love going to places with music or louder distractions. If I go to a restaurant and if they're gonna set us into a quiet spot, I will have to say, could we sit somewhere else?
I've been in my current relationship for 17 years. So I can't even fathom dating at this point, and it's very much a concern.
I'm a lover of the ocean and of mountains, so probably a day where there was like scuba diving involved, and I think part of feeling like, you know, in your own world, and that just feels like such a safe meditative place for me. Same thing in nature, like going out hiking, like there's a spaciousness there that doesn't make you feel so trapped.
I prefer do something at home, like maybe like watching a movie or something. That way you're not directly looking at the person, you're focusing on the movie, but you can still turn and have those face-to-face conversations.
And then we'd go home and watch a movie online, and we wouldn't drink any tea or any wine because that noise really annoys me. End of perfect date.
Misophonia has altered my life a lot. I remember Christmas time, my entire family would be at my grandma's house, and they're all loud snorers, like so loud. And I would spend almost every night in the bathtub like this, trying to just get away from it so I could fall asleep. When I was in school, if there was somebody sniffing, somebody coughing, it would greatly alter my test-taking abilities because I couldn't focus.
The best way I can describe it is kind of being auditorily assaulted all the time. And that's really difficult to live in day by day, and you start to grow resentful, especially when they don't make an effort to even understand your condition.
So when I would have someone to just vent to and explain my problems was really helpful. I think misophonia kind of deepened the relationship more so than, I guess, a neurotypical relationship in a way. Even though it's like an imperfection, I think we both loved each other a lot more.
It's altered our life by just having to be really sensitive to things that we do. So If we're going to a party, sometimes I will ask people to have music on before we get there, especially if there's like eating sounds are really, really hard for me, or just certain quiet. And so if overall we're still able to do most things, it's just kind of learning how we function, like bringing the earplugs. I mean, always, like, we have so many earplugs everywhere.
Meal times can be tricky. Sometimes I need to sit farther away, or we'll play music. So yeah, I think it's just really changed our habits. I think, I feel lucky that my husband's pretty understanding, and I can't imagine having a partner that would like be dismissive of it. I don't think it would work.
I can't imagine what it's going to be like when I have that husband. Like, what if I find the perfect guy that everything is perfect about him except that he chooses his mouth open? What am I going to do? That screws with everything.
Most of my life, I've really thought it was just me. And so I'm still navigating this whole thing being real.
There's a lot of guilt associated with feeling these feelings and being triggered by your partner. I feel guilty a lot, like, oh, I must have hurt their feelings by putting in earplugs, or I must have hurt her feelings by telling her to leave.
Plans would often change based on how days went, because misophonia is such a day-to-day thing. One day you could wake up and you could be perfectly fine, and then the next day you could just spend the entire time in your room curled up in a ball.
I feel bad that he has to shut himself off in our back office to eat at night, and I can't just be free to eat whatever he wants without having to think of how it's affecting me.
I do feel guilty to my husband and my daughter. I just feel silly having to ask them to readjust normal things. If they were in a different relationship, they would just be able to open a bag of chips. They would just be able to eat their chips the way that they wanted. They wouldn't have to have music on all the time.
But you can't go down this guilt spiral. When you have misophonia and you have a partner, you have to realize that it's not your fault. It is so important to know that it is not your fault that you're having these symptoms.
At this point, this is the only relationship that I've been in that misophonia is really a factor and even known about. I would say misophonia was in the top 3 to end the relationship. There have been other relationships where I've been able to satisfy that need. Have friends who, when we're together, I can actually look at them or just say, could you tone it down a little bit? And they have no problem whatsoever doing it. And then I also have cats. So my cats bring a great deal of joy to me.
What helps me in dealing with my misophonia at home is using earplugs. And then when I'm really easily triggered, I also have headphones that's like in a headband, and that helps a whole lot.
Headphones, earplugs. I started to put in earplugs even at night, finding that I sleep so much better and I can fall asleep so much faster because I'm not annoyed by breathing.
I would say that my coping mechanism is probably just turning on the vent. And like I said, not making direct eye contact, because when I do, I zone in on those things that I don't like. And my mom always says that it makes me really, really angry. And it's like something I can't control.
Most helpful things in my relationship with my fiance, earplugs just make everything better. Earplugs and noise canceling headphones. And our living room, because even though we love each other and we miss each other all day, it's important for my fiance and I to have a little bit of space to ourselves. I only feel truly safe from my triggers when I'm alone. And she understands this.
And I think it's kind of a little more alternating eating schedules, or not eating as much at the same time, doing other things together besides eating. It's such a formative piece of how we operate together. It's out of necessity for survival.
Concerning my partner, he's really understanding of me for the most part. He's able to listen. One of my triggers that he does is he'll sit and bounce his leg a lot, and it just makes this irritating noise. And so if I just put my hand on his leg, he just stops. Or he'll move away to a point where I'm not able to see it or feel it or hear it.
Communication is the key. If you don't talk about it, it's not going to be resolved, and the resentment will build up.
Just putting yourself out there and just telling other people that you have something going on, you don't even have to describe it. And I think in my brain, I just had a lot of voices telling me, oh, don't do that. They'll hate you. They won't understand. They don't care. But as soon as you just say something about it, people will try to make your life better, even if it's just a little thing.
I think that's been very useful for people with misophonia who want to have relationships, is to have a calm discussion where you can say, what shall I do when I'm bothered by something? What are my choices? And I want to discuss it with you so we're all on the same page. So if I'm bothered, can we decide it's okay, negotiate here? Can I just stand up and walk away? Can I give a signal like this? Can I give a signal? And then that means I need to leave. Can I have some secret signal that maybe you know that I'm with a group? That means I'm about to leave, because that's a good technique to leave, rather than getting to the point where you're yelling at people or throwing things. So, and then agree later to take a walk, go do something fun, ride your bike, do something that you can do that's fun without those triggers.
I feel rage, I try to just go walk outside and take a breath. And also just try to be like, wow, that's really bothering me right now. Can you please go eat that outside? Or, just trying to own it and name it when it happens, and try to normalize that for my family too, that they can do that as well.
Take time to relax and then approach the problem later, a couple hours later, the next day, and do it in a way that's not offensive and not accusatory. Communicate in a healthy way.
The main thing is to figure out how to communicate and keep the communication going. Although again, it's perfectly fine and reasonable for you to take a break and say, we've been talking now for a while. I feel like I need a break. Can we come back at 4:30? Find someone who is in the relationship with you who can be unoffended by that and say, okay.
And the key to a healthy relationship is being able to communicate those things and being understanding. So just let them know straight off the bat, hey, these are things that I can't handle, and they should be able to work around that with you.
At the end of the day, all she cares about is my peace of mind, and that is just such a wonderful gift after being misunderstood for so many years by so many people who I love. To have somebody that may not understand on a physical level, but tries her hardest to understand me and make me comfortable is so special. So if you have someone like that in your life who just wants you to feel safe and comfortable and tries their best to accommodate you, even if they're not doing a perfect job, that is very rare and should not be seen lightly.
Just communicate with one another, be understanding, be open with one another.
It's only been probably in the most recent years that I've been able to bring it up, feel more comfortable bringing it up with people that I knew I would be affected by. Like, hey, this is something that really bothers me and I'm feeling that right now. Then even that alone helps to lessen the level of response that you have to it.
Something I often hear about misophonia is a consideration thing. They're being so rude. We hear things that other people do not hear.
Finding someone that you can communicate your hatreds with is a really good match. Just because they don't understand, they are willing to take the time to understand what you're going through and how hard it is on you. And I feel like that is a really good characteristic to have in a partner.
My advice for people in relationships is just to be honest and talk about it. But unfortunately, this thing doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. And just having people who understand you and can love you no matter what.
Just be clear about it. Talk about it up front so there's no mysteries, and make sure that the other person understands that you're not really angry at them. You're angry at this trigger sound that's so difficult for you.
So much of my experience with it growing up felt very isolated. I feel so much rage, like that's not normal, and what's wrong with me that I'm feeling this way, and nobody else seems to be bothered by this stuff, and just really honoring that it is a thing.
Empathy is a big deal. Your condition does not define you. However, you do have to make considerations in your life for the person that you love.
If I am just kind about my request versus just being demanding, seems to really soften the request.
My saving grace has been music, whether it be piano music, classical music, rap, R&B, something of the sort to tune out that person that's chewing really, really loud. It saves me so much from like bursting and screaming with rage. That saved my life.
Invest in some really good earplugs. That's what I've done. Maybe have some sort of like safe word if you're out in public, and that way you don't have to tell your partner, hey, I'm really aggravated right now and I have to get away, because that can sometimes be embarrassing if you're in a big group.
Advice for a romantic relationship, I'd say before you dive in, make sure that if you have misophonia serious to me, do a test. See if like they chew really loud, or if it's something that you can fix over time. If it is something that you can fix, it's malleable, then go ahead, fix it. But if it's not, if you struggle with it as much as me, then I would say cut it off, because it really screws with relationships, and for me, it's not something you can necessarily cope with, especially if you're looking for a lifelong partner. I don't see myself coping with something like that.
A big piece of advice I would give to somebody in a relationship who has misophonia is, first and foremost, look after yourself. You can't be in a healthy relationship with someone else unless you're in a healthy relationship with yourself and you know your symptoms and you respect your boundaries.
There is a name to it now, and more research being done to help validate everybody that does experience it, and also help more tools to explain it to other people who really have a hard time understanding, maybe because it's not their experience at all. So I think having those things and sharing those tools helps everybody else just have more empathy and understanding around it as something that we really could be making accommodations for rather than judgments about.
I want to acknowledge that people with misophonia often feel lonely. They feel cut off from regular life and regular activities. And I want to encourage people with misophonia to reach out and find relationships. Some of those relationships might be on the internet. You might have one of the support groups that you're part of with a lot of other people that have misophonia, where you can connect with other people that understand you. That's a wonderful feeling, to reach out and have those relationships, because there are thousands and thousands of people with misophonia all over the world, and there's thousands and actually millions of dollars going into research right now, and that we are going to find solutions for this. In the meantime, try hard to create some circle of friends or support group where you are feeling connected to other people. This might make your life a little bit better.
I don't need to feel ashamed about it or like something's wrong with me, because I'm not the only one that struggles with it. That makes me hopeful, and I try to focus on that it's a good thing to be talking about and to share and be honest.